Good morning, listeners. You're welcome to this week's Agri Report. I'm Jim Finn. My guests this morning are Aidan Brennan from the Irish Farmers Journal on the Positive Farmers Conference, Marcus O'Halloran on an event being run by Agri Aware during the week, and a very interesting piece from Rosalind Skillen on Sherrington, and this should be of particular interest to parents. My first guest this morning is Vincent Power, and Vincent is with Teagasc and he's in the Clonmel office. Good morning, Vincent, and thank you very much for joining us, and may I wish you a very happy new year.
Good morning, Jim, and Happy New Year to you too, yeah?
Okay, Vincent, we're going to be talking about minerals pre-calving, which, of course, the calving season is virtually upon us at the moment. So, what should dairy farmers look for when choosing a dry cow mineral to purchase?
Yeah, well, sure, look, I suppose they should be well into feeding minerals at this stage, Jim. As you said, the calving season won't be long about coming on there now in the next few weeks. So I suppose the dry cow mineral is important, like for having easy calvings and preventing milk fever and stuff like that. But there's various different specs out there, various different quality minerals, and I suppose it's important to choose the best quality and pay the bit of extra money, even if it is a small bit extra, to get a good quality mineral. So I suppose there's a few key things with a dry cow mineral for the dairy cows. Like the main one there is that you want 0% calcium in a pre-calver mineral, and I suppose the idea of that is you're trying to trick the cow's system into metabolizing calcium from her bones, because when she calves, she has a huge requirement for calcium, and you'll never feed enough to satisfy that requirement. So you have to try and trick the cow's system into using up some of the calcium in her, metabolizing her own calcium, as well as and then post calving, you start introducing additional calcium. But important to have 0% in your pre-calving mineral. I suppose the other key elements in it then, and it's what dictates the cost of a pre-calver mineral, is the magnesium and the phosphorus. Okay. So magnesium needs to be up around 22 to 25%. So if you see a pre-calver mineral and it says 10%, which you will see, you may as well just write it off. It's a waste of time. The cow needs at least 25%. So if you're feeding 120 grams a day, you're looking at 20 to 25 grams a day of a pre-calver of magnesium. So she needs that. The phosphorus then needs to be 2 to 4%, depending on the silage piece. So it's important then to get a mineral analysis done on silage as well. So the other key one there is vitamin D in your pre-calver. So vitamin D is very important for calcium and phosphorus metabolism. Okay, so that needs to be around 14,000 units when fed per 120 gram feeding rate. So I suppose the other thing that's important with the dry cow mineral spec is the feeding rate. So generally, you're looking at 120 grams a day per cow, and you probably need to be feeding that for at least 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks anyway, pre-calving. The lead-in period, I suppose, the 6 weeks is important for the trace elements for them to work, like your zinc and stuff like that. So it's important to get started early, and hopefully farmers are aware at this stage that the minute their cows are going dry, that they're kind of feeding these dry cow minerals. But picking a good quality one is key, Jim. And if it might work out at €10 a bag more for the proper constituents in it, but it's worth it. Like a call out from a vet for a milk fever or something like that is not a cheap thing to be dealing with. So just pick the good quality one, I'd be saying.
And it could become a very dear one if you lost the cow. So, and
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what's your opinion on the use of boluses for dry cow minerals?
Yeah, look, some farmers use boluses. I suppose I'd put it this way, Jim. If a cow needs 120 grams a day on a 50-day dry period, that's 6 kilos of mineral. If you work it out over the days. and there's no bolus, is going to be 6 kilos. Like, it's 6 bags of sugar. So when you'll see the size of a bolus that's going down a cow's throat, if you just look at it physically, you can see that they're not going to get enough out of it. Like, so look, boluses are fine for if you have a trace element problem like a copper deficiency or something like that. But as a pre-carver mineral for cover and everything, I wouldn't think they're adequate. Similar like with licks and buckets and stuff like that. The problem with those is you know yourself, you have cows there that'll lick them all day, and you'll have cows that won't touch them. So the best option is just buy your bagged minerals, feed them on top of the silage, and 120 grams a day. If you're short on feed space, you can split the feed twice a day, if morning and evening, just on top of the silage. Keep it simple,
Right. So your advice is buy the bag and forget about all the other methods on which you can feed pre-calving minerals.
Yeah, well, I would think they're the best option.
Yeah.
Look, as I said, boluses and that are okay for a trace element deficiency like copper or something like that, but I wouldn't go with them for an overall pre-carver mineral,
Okay. Now, moving on then. What can farmers do to reduce the risk of their cows getting milk fever, which would be one of the reasons, I suppose, we're feeding the pre-calving mineral anyway?
Yeah, so look, that's obviously one of the big things is your pre-calver mineral, but I suppose other things that you need to be looking at, and I suppose it's a bit late now to be talking about, but like early on when you're drying off your cows, body condition score in your cows is key, So if you have heavy cows, we'll say, you'll know yourself if they're fat. But even if you run them through the crush and you look at a kind of body condition score, your cows should be in around 3 to 3.25 a calf, and if they're above 3.5 or really fat cows, they're at high risk for milk fever. So those cows, you might want to separate them out into a group, those kind of cows, and you maybe restrict the silage a bit, or you might add a bit of straw or something like that. You want them to lose maybe a condition score or half a score just to have them calving down. I suppose other things like third calvers, older animals at and over third calvers are a higher risk, so you need to kind of monitor those. Having the magnesium is key in the dry period, so your 25%, 25 grams a day. So the cows can't really store it, so you have to feed it daily. The other thing then, I suppose, is your high potassium silage. So, I would say you need to be getting mineral analysis done on your silage, because the only way you'll see if the silage is high in potassium, obviously potassium locks up magnesium. So, if your percentages, we'll say in silage, if it's higher than 2.7 to 2.9%, then interventions are hard to work with silage. So you might need to always keep some kind of poor quality silage, I suppose, especially for late calving. Late in the when just before they're calving 3 to 4 weeks, you could feed poorer quality silage that wouldn't be high in K, just to help prevent that kind of thing, But yeah, body condition score is key there, Jim. Getting your cows calving at the correct body condition and grouping your animals in that sense, So if they're thin, you need to feed them a bit more. And obviously, if they're heavy, reduce the silage intake a bit and try and get them down to that 3 to 3.25 a calving,
Yeah. Okay. Staying with milk fever, Vincent, what are the treatment options for a cow with milk fever?
Yeah, sure. Look, I suppose you're going to have the two types of milk fever. I mean, you have clinical milk fever, which is one we all know. Your cow is down in the shed, she can't get up. Muscle weakness. The cow, they're dull, they're cold. They'll have a bit of a fever there. That's the common one. I suppose. Look, for a farmer's point of view, really all they can do, I suppose, put a bottle of calcium under the skin. It's important to get that in. But I suppose if it's kind of speed is the thing there. So if a cow is down and she's bad, you need to be calling her vet, because she probably needs a bottle into the vein. Yeah, no harm getting a bottle in under the skin, bottle of calcium. Post calving, then I suppose you continue your magnesium supplementation if it's on flush spring, autumn grass, and that's to prevent your grass tetany. But yeah, important to get the bottles in, I suppose, quick. That's with your clinical signs. I suppose it's a bit harder than detecting your subclinical signs, so slow, difficult calvings, retained cleanings, that kind of thing, low dry matter intake. uterine infections. These are all kind of subclinical signs of milk fever. So you need to keep an eye out for those as well. And again, it comes back to, no calcium pre-cab and, having the cow in the right body condition score. And, also having your trace elements, so your selenium, your copper, your zinc, they need to be in your pre-cab or mineral. Iodine is important as well for preventing milk fever, So the things like that need to be looked at. But you need to be looking for the subclinical signs, like you might see a cow holding on to cleanings and stuff like that. And look, a lot of the time it comes back to the pre-cab or mineral, and that they're getting enough of it,
Yeah. One last question to you this morning. What would your one big takeaway for any farmer listening to us this morning, Vincent?
Yeah, sure. Look, I suppose the big thing with this is just is paying a little bit extra to get your good quality dry cow minerals. You get the deal where there's €10 cheaper per bag or something like that. But the big thing is just it works out at a couple of euros a cow if you add it up across the herd. It's not worth talking about what you save, and just to get the quality. So go back to your advisor. If you're looking at minerals or whatever, see what they say about it. But yeah, just pay that little bit extra, I would say, for the good quality mineral. That's a key thing,
Okay, well, look at Vincent. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. That, listeners, was Vincent Power from Teagasc. And as I said at the top of the programme, Vincent is in the Clonmel office. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Aidan Brennan from the Irish Farmers Journal. Good morning, Aidan, and a very happy new year to you.
Good morning, Jim, and happy new year to you.
Thank you very much. Now, Aidan, you want to fill in the listeners with what's going to happen at the Positive Farmers Conference, which takes place on the 14th, which is next Wednesday.
Yeah, correct, Jim. So I'm lending a bit of a hand at organising this year's Positive Farmers Conference, as I have done for the last number of years. And look, it's on in Cork, in the Radisson Blu Hotel, as you say, on January the 14th, which is next Wednesday. It's a great day out. It's only a one-day event this year. Normally it's 2 days. So they've condensed it into a one-day conference. And I suppose really, Jim, it's an opportunity for farmers, particularly dairy farmers, that are maybe gearing up for the busy spring period ahead, to take a step back, get a bit of motivation, hear some inspirational stories from inspirational farmers, and be, I suppose, buoyed up for the year ahead and ready to face the challenges that many dairy farmers are likely to face in 2026 with falling milk price and higher costs of production.
Okay, and you said that it's the right time for dairy farmers. They won't be too busy at the moment, and to try to get their ducks in order for 2026, and we know that's not going to be as easy as some of the years gone by. But what's your lineup of speakers, Aidan?
Yeah, look, there's a really good lineup of speakers. I suppose opening the conference is Michael Murphy, who'll be well known to many farmers from around the country. He lots of experience. He's going to give a kind of a state of play, what's happening in the market, some of the fundamentals around supply and demand in terms of milk. And I suppose while the conference is called Positive Farmers Conference, Michael isn't very positive about milk price at the moment. And he's predicting that prices could stay low for, the next longer than the 6-month period, which many people are expecting it to last for. He's saying this could last for over a year and beyond. So we're going to go into a bit of detail on that. And joining him on that session then is Dr. Brendan Horn, a fellow Tipperary man. Brendan is working in Teagasc and Moore Park, and he's going to give an overview of some of the trends in costs of production on dairy farms over the last number of years, and what farmers can do to get back on track and to reduce those costs in order to continue to make profit in 2026, even at lower milk prices.
Right, okay, that's the first two speakers. Move on from there.
Yeah, so even sticking, I suppose, with the theme for costs, we've Dennis Finnegan, a dairy farmer from Cork who's operating a number of dairy farms. He's going to be joined by Jack Kennedy, and they're having a chat on how Dennis approaches costs of production, and they're going to do a sample budget for 2026 for a dairy farm and to go through how farmers can reduce costs, real practical examples for how to do a budget. And he's joined as well by Diarmuid Brannock from IFAC. So a really good session there in terms of the practicalities of doing budgets. And that's kind of the first morning done then, so it's all costs.
That brings us to lunch, and then after that?
There's a change then after that. We're moving towards more, I suppose, genetics,
right.
But really about herd wastage. So what can we do to reduce losses in the dairy herd through infertility, through health problems, through lameness and so forth. Gillian O'Sullivan, who will be well known to many listeners, is chairing this session, and she's joined by two well-known women, Doreen Corridan, who's the CEO of the National Cattle Breeding Centre. Formerly, she was, so she's a vet by training, but formerly Doreen was the CEO of Munster Bovine. And Mela Briscoe, she's a dairy farmer from Galway, again very well known. Herself and her husband are milking over 360 cows across 2 milking platforms, and the two of them are going to speak with Gillian O'Sullivan on what they do, what advice they would have to farmers who are looking to reduce wastage. So Mela is doing it on the ground, exceptionally low calf mortality, really good fertility, low cell count, and Doreen is going to put a bit of science behind that in terms of genetics and the whole, I suppose, veterinary side of it.
Right, Hugh. And have you another session?
We have final session of the day, Jim, is lessons from the ground up, inspirational farmer stories. We've 3 farmers here. Cathal MacLear is speaking first. He's a share milker in farming in County Kilkenny, but is originally from Northern Ireland. Didn't inherit a dairy farm and started from scratch, and now owns his own herd of cows, and he's share milking them in County Kilkenny. And then we have a husband and wife team, young farmers, Peter Farrell and Ciara Lynch from County Meath. Ciara was a professional in marketing, was working for a marketing agency in Dublin, gave all that up and went home farming with Peter, and now they're milking, I think, over 900 cows. So look, it's an inspirational story. Not everyone is going to follow that, but how they do that while you're rearing a young family, working together as a husband and wife, their growth journey to date, and how they remain profitable and positive in the face of challenges. So look, that sums up really, I suppose, Jim, the type of topics that are going to be discussed at Positive Farmers Conference this year.
All of them extremely important, given what the forecast is like at the moment anyway for dairy farmers. Anybody
yes,
listening
to
us,
challenges coming there with milk price, as you say.
Yeah. Anybody listening then to us this morning and they say they'd like to go to it, what do they have to do, Aidan?
Well, the best thing to do is I suppose, buy your ticket online.
Right.
So that's available on www.positivefarmers.ie, and there's a phone number available there as well if farmers would like to give the organisers a ring in order and book a ticket in. But it's very important, I suppose, that they book in advance, because ticket numbers are selling out fast. And I can share the phone number with you there if you want to book tickets as well. It's 087 645 7987.
Okay, and that gives people an opportunity after listening to us on this Saturday morning to make a phone call first thing on Monday morning anyway, to make sure that they can get their ticket and be able to attend the conference. Aidan, from your observations in the journal now, and like an awful lot of people in Tipperary, you're a dairy farmer as well. What do you think 2026 is likely to bring?
Well, one thing it's definitely going to bring is lower milk prices. We can nail that down now. The first 6 months of the year, at least, and maybe more, are going to be low milk prices. The co-ops are forecasting further reductions from where we are. So I think Tyrone is currently paying 36 cents a litre or thereabouts.
Yeah.
But I mean, we would expect to see further reductions in that based on what they're saying. I'm not talking down prices, but that's what's likely to happen. And when I talk to the co-op executives, they're telling me their market is returning 32 cents a litre at the moment. That's not to say it's going to stay the same, but definitely, the spring is going to be difficult from a milk price point of view. The big unknown, Jim, is the weather.
Yeah.
And you could handle a low milk price if you get good weather with it. But if you look back to 2009 and 2012, they were marked by low milk price years, but also really bad weather years. Mm-hmm. And that's an extra cost, because you don't get the output. Cows don't milk as well. You have additional costs with feed going in. And when you combine that then with a low milk price, it really messes things up from a profitability point of view. One of the saving graces, of course, this year and this spring is that we should have, and all the expectations are saying that calf prices will remain strong. So farmers are, they maybe got the benefit of it towards the end of the calving season last year, but hopefully this year we're going to get the full benefit of that, because calf prices are expected to be much stronger than they have been for as long as I can remember, at least.
Well, as long as anybody can remember. I'm around a long time and I've never seen anything like the price the calves are making, and it's only a few years ago, we found it difficult to give them away for nothing.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing how quickly things have
Yeah,
changed.
it's amazing. So, you know, I'd be kind of worried about the people at the bottom as far as production costs are concerned. I'd be worried about them going into 2026.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there has been maybe a bit of relaxation in costs across the board, Jim, over the last number of years, because milk price has been good, and it was easy to make money, let's say, from being a dairy farmer. That's not going to be the same in 2026. It's only going to be really those that are really focused on costs and have a low cost of production that are going to make a profit. So how can those farmers then that are in a higher cost category,
Yeah.
how can they make a living and survive 2026 and beyond that? So there's going to be a bit of surgery needed, I think, in terms of the costs. That comes back to refocusing on grass, reducing concentrate use. But there are hidden costs there that you can change. They're not necessarily hidden; they're there, but there are some costs, I should say, such as high land rent costs. Farmers that have a lot of debt have to repay back that. It's unlikely farmers are going to reduce their labour because they need help on farms, and labour costs have increased, and it's hard to find people to work on farms, and no more than any other industry. So there's going to be costs there that you can't really get rid of, and then there's the drawings as well. I mean, farmers have to live, families have to be fed and looked after, and there's some of those drawings are going to be under pressure in 26 if the costs on the farm level are higher.
Now, everything you're just after saying in the last couple of sentences is a reason why farmers who are dairy farmers at the moment should be at that conference in Cork on next Wednesday.
Absolutely.
Aidan, look, thanks very much for joining us, and I hope the conference goes extremely well for you and your part that you're playing in it. That, listeners, was Aidan Brennan from the Irish Farmers Journal talking about the Positive Farmers Conference, which takes place in Cork on next Wednesday, the 14th of January. Listeners, my next guest this morning is Marcus O'Halloran, and Marcus is with, as you know by now, AgriAware, and they have an event coming up on next Thursday, the 15th, and it's in County Kildare. Good morning, Marcus, and thanks very much for joining us.
Good morning, Jim, and good morning to your listeners.
Marcus, before we start, let me first of all wish you and everybody in AgriAware a very happy new year.
Many thanks, Jim, and many happy returns to you and all in Tip FM.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, I see you're collaborating with the IFA in this particular new awareness program. Is that correct?
So I suppose we're running an event next Thursday, Jim. It's called it's Food for Thought is what the name of the event is. But what it essentially is to educate those that are actually working in the sector, particularly around the areas of Mercosur, CAP and nitrates, which are the three key policy directives that are going to control the majority of what we do over the next couple of years. As you know, CAP is our Mercosur is in the news this week, and nitrates is something that's only been in the news before Christmas. So it's to educate the industry really on what the measures are, or the conditionality that farmers and the industry will have to endure for nitrates in particular over the next couple of years. And that's why we have Kevin Maher, who is works for Dairy Sustainability Ireland. He's actually a native of 2 Mile Borris, and Kevin will be talking us through the different aspects of the Farming for Water programme and how that has benefited our waterways. We've Phelim O'Neill then from the Farmers Journal, who will be talking about markets and trade across Europe. But our keynote speaker for the day is Ty Buckley of the Irish Farmers Association, who will cover off all three of the topics. We're joined from Europe, from Brussels, by Ksenia Simovic. Ksenia is the head of trade in Copa Cogeca, which is the European Farm Organisation.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully have a real strong insight as to what's actually happening on the ground in Brussels, because what we hear here is not necessarily what she might be hearing.
Right. Well, that's probably very accurate as well. We don't hear everything that is happening, particularly within the Commission building, whatever. With regard to the Parliament, we probably know an awful lot more. And you mentioned there that we heard a lot about Mercosur this week, and of course we have, and we've also heard that there has some beef from Brazil with hormones in it has been found in beef that came from Brazil here in Ireland, and of course it makes Mercosur a little bit more real for the consumer, does it?
It does, and it makes it that bit more hard to sum up too from a farmer point of view. I think the Taoiseach as of Wednesday was quoted as saying that a lot of progress had been made in the Irish Times on Mercosur. But we can't forget the report that the Irish Farmers Journal done only a couple of weeks ago before Christmas around what they found, and the free trade really of hormones, antibiotics, and what have you in South America, that we're bound by prescription here, or the substances are either prescribed or totally banned altogether. And it slaps us in the face for the amount of work that we do in terms of our traceability standards and what we do to maintain the highest animal welfare standards in the world, really, Jim. And Mercosur is that no good will come out of Mercosur.
Yeah, well, you mentioned what the Taoiseach said on Wednesday. I'm saying what the IFA said on Wednesday, that again, that Brazilian beef was found to contain banned substance here in Ireland on Wednesday. They announced that. And that's why I'm saying the consumer should be beginning to be more wary of what Mercosur means for them. We know what it means for Irish producers, but what it means for them, that a beef of a certain standard is now likely and could become a feature on Irish shelves in the near future.
Oh, there's no doubt in it, Jim. And when the substances that are being used are linked to carcinogens, it's that becomes very real for the consumer. So it doesn't look at in AgriAware and no doubt in any other organisation that you'll come across in Ireland. We all strongly encourage people to buy local and to buy Irish in terms of the decisions that we're making at shop level. And I know, a lot of consumers will be looking at the trolley and they'll be looking at the cost that it has on them. But the cost of your health is something that you can't afford to mess up with. So, Brazilian beef or South American beef or poultry, whatever it may be, it has no place in Irish trolleys.
Okay. What else are you doing other than this event next week? What other plans have AgriAware for the rest of the year? Sorry.
I suppose it's to build really, Jim, on what we've done in 2025. 2025 has been the most successful year we've had now, I think, ever. We've brought over 13,000 people to on-farm events to build that, and looking at how we can build that really down around in the Cork region, in the southern part of the country. We've a lot of impact on the east wall of the country as such, and it's to broaden that. To build on getting people on farms is one, but to be seen more or to be heard more by the general public. Like last year, we've a stat there that as far as the 5.5 million people go in the country, each of those would have come across us about 10 times. So it's trying to increase that more people are getting a message of what Irish agriculture is doing, but becoming more relevant too, and breaking down the messages of Mercosur, of nitrates, of CAP, and putting those out on social media in a more user-friendly way, Jim, that people will understand. Building on the school programs that we have, that's the bedrock of what we do. I suppose it's our most important and most recognisable piece that we do. We've over 135,000 primary and secondary school pupils that take part in agri-education programs, and I think it's a really, really important piece of work that we do, because we all know, that focuses of the age probably between 5 and 18, and when people hit 18 until probably the time they're 35, their focus in life changes, Jim. And as an agri sector, getting those positive messages of agriculture and what the sector, the farmer, is doing for society, they can be that little bit harder. And the focus obviously changes to socialising at an earlier age, to looking for a mortgage and life itself. And until we're probably in charge of the shop and trolley ourselves in at a later stage, a lot of these things, they'll be lost on us. So we need to ensure that we're continuing to build on the impression we're making for those of the age of influence between 5 and 18, Jim, and that's going to continue to be the focus of AgriAware.
Okay, you mentioned earlier in this interview, Marcus, about farming for water. How are you getting that message across to young people? Easier to get it across to young people, I reckon, than it is to get it across to the population in general.
I think that the likes of Dairy Sustainability Ireland and those that are the co-ops who are looking after the Farming for Water programme, they're definitely distilling that information. I know there's a new website called ourwatermatters.ie, and there's a lot of utilisable information on that for the general public as to the difference between groundwater and tap water, etc. Because there is many myths out there, I suppose many misconceptions out there, more so as to the different sources of our water. As far as we go in Agri-Aware, Jim, it's very much ensuring that the basics are understood in terms of how we're minding our hedgerows, how we're minding our margins in our field when we're spreading slurry, the nutrient management care that we take when we are applying fertiliser to our crops, and how we're looking after the water that way. And then in some cases how we're harvesting rainwater on farms then as well. But in particular around the derogation, that's a key area that we'd be educating on when we are in schools, and measures farmers are taking, such as cambering roadways to divert rainwater or to divert soil water away from dikes and that. That's all part of what we do, Jim. But getting into the seriously more technical part of that now, we leave that to the ESI and co.
Okay. One last question to you. I don't know whether you're involved in this when you go to talk to young people in schools, and that is farm safety. We've lost too many farmers, 19 in 2025, far too many lives. Do you touch on that at all in your discussions with young people?
We do. I suppose the main focus of Agri-Aware is around to educate the public on the role of the farmer in terms of one, animal health and welfare, two, environmental sustainability, and three, the nutritious product that we produce. But from time to time, Jim, we do educate rural schools around farm safety and all of the other aspects of the farmer too. Last year we would have done a campaign that would have been specifically for farmers. It was called Sowing Wellbeing in Every Field, and we focused around quad safety. I think I actually spoke to you about that late on in last year. But we also have a programme that would have went out to primary schools this year, and in between September and Christmas, I think we'd roughly 9,000 or 10,000 primary school students that would have gotten a farm safety education piece. We've probably done around 24,000 of a number of pupils that would have gotten farm safety education every year, I'd say, for the last 5 to 6 years in Agri-Aware. But again, we're at the start of the year. It will be an area that we'll touch on throughout the year, also with the schools.
Okay, well, look at Marcus, we're running out of time. I want to thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. That, listeners, was Marcus O'Halloran from Agri-Aware. Listeners, my next guest this morning is new to AgReport on Tip FM. She is Rosalind Skellin, and she's with the Country Living section of the Irish Farmers Journal, and she has a very interesting article on this week's journal. It's really worth going out and buying the journal to read about it in more detail. She is talking about share enting, a word I didn't know existed until I got an email yesterday, and Rosalind is going to tell me all about it. Good morning, Rosalind, and thanks very much for joining us here on Tip FM.
Morning, Jim. Thank you for having me on.
Right. This new word that I said I've never heard until I read about it yesterday. Okay, is this going to be a new word in the Oxford Dictionary?
Yeah, it very well could be. Sharenting is a combination of the two words parenting and sharing, and it's been coined because the practice of parents posting their children on social media is so common in the digital age that it's actually just been given a name, sharenting. So it's like, I'm sure you have people online that you see and they post like the personal details and the milestones of their child's development, first steps, first day of school, sports achievements, birthdays, all that just is turned into this flow of social media posts. And I'm sure that your listeners will also have seen the video that Data Protection Ireland put out at the end of last year, which really packs a punch. It's only 40 seconds long, but it introduces us to 8-year-old Ava and her parents who've been sharing information about her online, just like her name, her age, her football training schedule, and then 3 strangers talk to her, and they talk to her with really relaying personal details about her life, and there's this uncomfortable sense of intrusion, of familiarity there. So the guidance that the Data Protection Commission Ireland is offering to parents is to pause before they post, and it's ignited this conversation throughout Ireland, but also in our newsroom about Sharon Dean. So in the article, I talked to two influencers who both have opposing views on this. One is a content creator who uses her children in her posts. Another is a woman who's very guarded about posting her children. But it's examining Sharon Dean, which is this global trend that's grown since 2010, really. And they're really accelerated during lockdown as well. And thinking all about the long-term risks that Sharon Dean poses for children. So parents don't often think about this, but when you are posting their name, their location, school details, that all becomes part of a permanent digital footprint, and that can expose children to risks. Risks like identity theft, exploitation, their health and safety, cyber risks. The data thing is just huge in terms of what's being given away about children and what's potentially identifiable.
Do we know how common it is, or do we have any idea of how much damage it is doing, sharing across? And I'm quite sure that's the sharing is across all digital platforms, is it?
Yeah. So in terms of how common it is, there's actually no research in Ireland. So we don't have a specific figure from Ireland. But in the US, 92% of children have some sort of digital footprint by the time they're age 2. So there'll be pictures and videos posted of them online. And then in comparison with 73% of children across the UK, France, Germany, Italy and Spain. So we can kind of infer from that research that it's probably somewhere between 70 and 90% of Irish children who are posted online before the age of 2. And I guess even if your listeners think about it in their own lives, on their own social media feeds, to me, that figure sounds about right. And then your second question was just about the how serious it is.
Yeah.
And I think, not to scare anyone, but there are significant risks. So I talked to an expert who's kind of leading on this in terms of digital safeguarding in the UK, and she has mapped 6 categories of risk facing children who've been shared online. So these are financial risks, risks to their education, health and safety, family disruption, identity risk, and the impact on their identity. And if you also think about just some of the situations that parents are posting about, they're not always very dignified. So even the hashtag potty training has 757,000 posts on Instagram. So that's potentially 757,000 pictures of children who've gone to the toilet in their own homes. So it's, just as well thinking about the kind of things that people post, maybe photos that were once kind of relegated to an old crusty photo album that sat on the shelf, and now they're online where lots of other people can see them.
Based on the research that you've done and this wonderful article you have in this week's Farmers Journal Country Living section, what advice would you give to parents listening to us this morning?
That's a tricky one because it really is on parents. So Sharon Dean really sits at the heart of the freedom of speech debate as far as I see it, because currently there's no regulation about this, and the onus is on parents to determine what they share and how much they share of their children. But I think in line with what the Data Commission Ireland were saying with their video, it's really about pausing before you post and thinking, why am I sharing this? Where is it going to end up? What information am I giving? And just considering those questions before you post is really important. And it's actually just a conversation that I think people are starting to have with each other, with their family members. For example, I talked to one couple who are expecting their baby in January. So they're having these kind of conversations between them as husband and wife and thinking, okay, what do we want to share of our daughter? And they've actually decided they don't want to share anything. But then they were saying to me, the tricky part is actually now talking to their aunties, uncles, grannies, grandads, all that, the family relatives who are really proud. And I think that actually is a big part of this conversation. People are just really proud parents. Everyone wants to show off their child, capture that proud mommy moment. So I think that as well is something which is difficult, the inclination of parents to show off their children because they love them. They're the most valuable and treasured beings in the world for them. So they just want to show everyone how wonderful they are. So I think it's also important to highlight it doesn't come from a place of of malice. I don't think that people are like, wanting to share like risk information that could put their children at risk. But it's just something that people are now starting to think about, particularly with the news headlines this week around Grok and the ability for the tool to remove people's clothes and that kind of thing. It's really at the forefront of people's minds, isn't it? This topic.
It sure is. And we'll leave that topic now for this morning. But I suppose the best thing we can say to parents is be careful.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Just be mindful.
Yeah.
Be mindful where you post, and I think everybody has to do the right thing for them as individuals. It's not up to me or anyone else to make parents post a certain way. But I think asking themselves, where the image is going and where's the video going to go is important.
Okay, I know you spent 2 days walking around the Young Scientist competition event that's going on in Dublin at the moment, and I know there's today and tomorrow left for anybody who would like to go. What impressed you as you walked around Young Scientist 2026?
Oh my goodness, what didn't impress me? It was just fantastic. I think the real range of projects is really interesting, and people are kind of working on topics at an intersection. They're taking different fields of thought and smashing them together. 25% of the projects looked at or used AI. So I definitely noticed a big growth in terms of focus on AI, machine learning, robotics this year. And then in terms of agriculture and agricultural exhibits, I think the focus was really on sustainability. But the amount of students that you talk to who are doing ag projects, and they were saying, oh, this was a big problem for my dad, this was a big problem for my uncle, and then they've decided to take a real practical look at the problem. So I think that's actually really nice as well. The agricultural exhibits take a really practical application to a problem. And I spoke to so many people doing incredible things in terms of using sheep wool instead of plastic as a strengthening agent in concrete. One project looking to tackle methane emissions. Loads of stuff to do with microplastics and plastic pollution, and loads of stuff to do with organic fertilizers, replacing fertilizers with seaweed as a natural ingredient. Yeah, there was just so many things. Even one project that was looking at plants on the pill and using birth control to see the impact of plants in terms of growth. So just fascinating things, people really thinking outside the box. I think it's just fantastic to see, because it's an opportunity to take learning outside the classroom and to just when you talk to students, why did you do this? It's just they wanted to do something different. They thought it would be interesting. And I just think that's great, rather than moving away from exam-based learning and encouraging children to, think with curiosity.
Okay, well, I hope that whets the appetite of my listeners, the people listening to you and I this morning, that number one, they will be careful about what they put up on on social media, and number two, there's a great opportunity to learn something if they go to visit the Young Scientists over the next 2 days.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on, Jim.
I want to thank you for coming on and sharing all that information with us here on Tip FM. That, listeners, is AgriReport for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show and that you'll join me at the same time next week. Coming up next is the news at 10 o'clock. And after that, Eamon Dwyer presents Down Your Way.